demo. Um, he makes it look easy, guys. I have a very difficult time with this. But he makes it look easy, and it's not that hard. If I'd go out and make something, it'd get easier for me. But we're going to have some steel here today. After he gets through the demo, if you want to make it there or try your hand at it, I'm going to set up one area, maybe over here, and I may even ask Al to go over there or work here. But if you want to and you've never done any blacksmithing, first time, just want to try, see how it goes. If you'll go over here, if you're a blacksmith that's been around for a while, please stay away from that area that we set up and let whoever's teaching that over there, let them teach it. We don't need 5 different people trying to tell somebody how to do something, okay? But we're probably set up over there or over here one. There's those that try your hand at it. We do have some steel and everything. That's about all I can say about Al. Al's been blacksmithing, but a full-time blacksmith. He had a business. He's recently retired and just does some teaching, demoing. So we're looking forward to his demo today. He, like I said, he always does a good job. I'm gonna bring this up again. Hopefully it's up, Al. These tongs right here, we have got 4 pair of each one missing. And it seems like we let somebody asked to borrow some. And if you have these, please bring them back. I thought, well, maybe I've got it in my house, but I didn't have. But if you borrowed them and just forgot about it, bring them back. There's no big deal. But it seemed like we let somebody wanted to borrow some for a demo or something. But we'll be making some more to replace those. It's kind of our green coat kit that we have back here. So look around your shop and see, hey, these look familiar, and there's 4 of each one of them. You probably the one that borrowed them. So bring them back. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Al. Like I said, there's not a lot more I can say about Al. He's a good friend and a pretty good blacksmith.
Thanks, okay.
He's just okay. He's just been ready to say it.
Thank you all for coming out today. As Ronnie said, we're going to talk about tongs today. And we'll get into that in a minute. The last several years, Ronnie has asked me to demonstrate normally in January, and tongs is normally what I do. And the last few years, I've kind of focused on doing things a little bit different. A lot of people, when they get into blacksmiths, especially a new person, if they've been watching Forged in Fire or something like that, they see a nice anvil and they see a nice forge, and they figure, I've got to have that before I can start blacksmithing. Several years ago, I made a pair of box joint tongs just on an anvil that I had made out of a piece of 2 1/4 inch square about this tall that I had welded to a plate. Just so everybody could see that you can make a pair of tongs on an anvil that's no bigger than that. When you think about it, the only place that you're working your material is between the face of your hammer and that particular point on the anvil. That's all you need. And you can do about anything you want to. Last year, I made a pair of scrolling pliers, and I made it on just a small, about a 4 inch square stake anvil that just sets down in a piece of wood. I've seen people that's made anvils just out of sledgehammer heads. Because remember, when you're working your metal, you're just working it between your hammer face and whatever you're hitting. Today, I'm going to be using this for an anvil. This is a couple of old die sets that Ronnie welded together. It's not hard. It's fairly flat. He milled kind of a horn in it. There's some rounded sections on the edges here. There's some sharp sections. And that's all you need. So that explains the anvil we're going to use today. Some of you may have noticed this particular looking coal that we've got in the forge here. Uh, Unfortunately, I wake up every morning and I go to the computer and I look at the news, and then I go to a site normally called iForge Iron. Maybe some of the rest of you have looked at this site. There's no telling what you're going to see topic-wise on this site. One of the topics that I seen yesterday was using feed corn as a fuel source in place of coal. And I read through a little bit of it, and I was skeptical. And then I saw a post that had been put on there by a man that I know in Pennsylvania, a very talented, very good smith, and he was talking about using feed corn when he demonstrated at various places. And he kind of listed some of the pros and cons about it. And of course, knowing him, I thought, well, I'm not going to let him say he could do anything that I can't do. So I shot Travis a text. I said, have you ever used corn for fuel? And I got this blank look back, And we come up and we cleaned out the forge, and I went over to Tractor Supply and I bought a 50-pound bag of feed corn. And we played with it some yesterday, and that's what we're going to use as fuel today. Some of the good points, a 50-pound bag of feed corn at Tractor Supply up here is $8.50. A 50-pound bag of coal, if you're an AFC member, is how much, Ashton? $15. Okay, so you've got that. Now, the corn is gonna burn faster than the coal. But what we saw yesterday is we can do everything using corn for a fuel that we can using coal. And I've told several of you before, when I first started blacksmithing, I was living in a post-World War II housing development. 900 square foot, 3-bedroom ranch, kitchen, living room, neighbor 25 feet away. I found real quick that one, they did not like me beating on that I-beam that I was beating on for an anvil. And two, they really didn't like the coal when I fired it up. Either they were not attracted by the smell, they did not like the smoke. One of the points that this fellow from Pennsylvania made about using coal or using corn is he was able to use that in demonstration settings, and nobody complained about the smell of the corn work. And even the smoke after he got going. So just some things to keep in mind. The tongs I'm going to be making today. We're going to make two different pairs. We're just going to make a small, general purpose, flat-jawed set of tongs. I always put a groove in mine so I can grab stuff with it. I use tongs like this all the time. We're going to go through the steps of making these. We're also going to make a small V-bit set of tongs today out of some lighter material. Again, they're V'd out to hold a smaller piece of either square or round stock. Both of them are easily made with a fire, something to hit on, and a hammer. You will hear or read people that say that they don't see any reason at all for somebody to know how to make a pair of tongs. The tongs are readily available, and they are. If you look on the internet, start shopping for tongs, you're going to find tongs anywhere from the $30 to $70 range, depending on what they are, and depending on whose name are on it. Both of these tongs that I'll be making today can be made for $1 worth of material.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. These, some of the ones you buy are very big, and that's why I like making mine, Jim. It's Dr. Batson here a little bit. Okay? I I won't say any, a lot of the old industrial tongs that I used to find when I was starting out, I always thought was too heavy. I didn't like the way they felt. That was one of the reasons I started making my own tongs. Some of the tongs today are too heavy for me, my personal life. Okay. That's fine. Go
I
ahead.
hate to interrupt Al right in the middle. As most of you saw, Dr. Batson is here. He's got several of his books out here. If you'd like to purchase one, and I'm sure you could entice him into autographing it, and I would advise that you do that. We've also got somebody with us that I've been wanting to introduce, Judd Clem. Judd is our Secretary of Treasury. He's the one that receives your money and everything. I wanted everybody to see him, know who he is. So it's good to have him with us today. And I apologize, Al, for interrupting right in the middle of your demo.
That's all right. We're talking about buying tongs. Another way to buy tongs today that has gotten fairly popular is to buy pre-cut tong blanks. Multiple people do them. Normally you can find them for, or I've seen them for $10 a pair. These are Ronnie's, and I asked him to bring these because one of the points that I'm going to be making later, and this is a real good illustration of them, is when you start making tongs, there's not a left and a right. They're both identical. And I couldn't think of any better illustration than to hold these up so that everybody can see them. This is a pair of tongs. It's not a left and right. And we'll be talking about that later. Again, it's like we was talking about. These are heavier than I like. I like my tongs light. All right, the first pair of tongs we're going to make is this flat-jawed pair here. These were started out of 5/8 inch round, 7 inches long. If anybody wants to try some of these later, we've got blanks cut over here ready for you. I have already partially drawn the reins out on these. I did that on the power hammer. But just watching somebody draw is real boring. Dustin's going to handle the fire for me today and warm them up. When I first started out, I was shown a way to make a pair of tongs. And I have several real ugly and non-functional pair of tongs buried deep in a drawer in my workshop. The second way I was shown to make a set of tongs is the way that I kind of adopted, and the way I'll show you today. It's not the only way. It may not even be the best way, but it's the way that has worked out good for me. It's a pretty simple process. I always tell everybody, if it's not simple, I can't tell you how to do it. These are the steps that we're going to use to make a pair of tongs. In some of the classes that Travis and I've taught, we've talked about this, and we've made up these little pieces we call 1, 2, 3 pieces. There's 3 steps to making a pair of tongs. You're going to make the jaw, you're going to make the boss, and then you're going to start your rein. When you start your jaw, if this is you facing the anvil, here's your anvil. When you start your jaw, you're going to have an inch and a quarter maybe of your material over the edge of your anvil. And what you're going to do, you're going to use a half face blow. This is what a half face blow does. A half face blow, when you're hammering down on it, creates that step. That's the first. That's how we start that jaw. Since we're doing just a small flat-jawed set of tongs, that's all we'll have to do. Whatever Dustin tells me, are we about ready there, Dustin? All right. So that's step 1. step 2, we'll draw our anvil again here. Here you are facing the anvil. The way I was taught is you're going to extend your tongs, you're going to hang your jaw over the anvil, over this outside edge of the anvil, about a 45-degree angle. And then, just like our first one, you're going to make a half-face blow, but in this case, here's your jaw. You're going to be hammering here. What that does, here was your face. Here's step number 1. Here's step number 2. So now we've created our jaw. We've started our boss. For our third step, we're going to draw our anvil again. Here we are. I'm going to hang steps 1 and 2, which is going to look kind of like this. I'm going to hang steps 1 and 2 over the back of the anvil. And again, I'm going to use this half blow, and I'm going to set that. I think I've even got it drawn wrong, haven't I? Let's see if I remember how to draw. It's been upside down. I'm upside down with that. Thank you, Clay. All right, we're going to do step 1. An inch. Hold on. Okay, I'm going to put about an inch over the edge of my anvil there. Answered the question already. Yes, you can forge in corn as a fuel. Do you have any clinker? No, allegedly. Okay. No. So there's step 1. Now, like I said, we're going to do both sides exactly the same. So I'm going to grab this other piece. We'll lay it on my anvil. We're going to do this one just like we did the first. Now, important thing. A weak spot on a pair of tongs, and yes, I know this from personal experience, is right here. If you get that too thin, that's where they'll break. So watch that. Now I'm going to refine that first one a little more. All right, now when I come out next, we're going to go to step 2. I'm going to rotate that 90 degrees away from me. I'm going to put that at about a 45-degree angle on the anvil. And I'm going to make that half face blow. one of the things I've read, one of the criticisms that people use about making tongs by hand is that it's too hard. It's too difficult a task for a beginner. I think this is just really a pretty basic operation. You have to practice your hammer control, but other than that, you're using the same stroke all the way through it. Your hammer is straight up and down, same place. Both pieces. One of the things we've discovered about this corn, you got to keep it packed down in your fire pot. If you've got too much air to it, if you've got too much air blowing up through it, what you see is those corn kernels floating around in the fire down there. When you go to try it, get ready to see that. Made my reins a little longer. Okay, so that's a start. We'll show this around we'll take another heat. In addition to playing out, here's that second step we was talking about. We're gonna do them both sides. I'm gonna take another heat on this. And again, we're gonna go down to about half more material thickness. Woo!
Careful, it's hot.
I always use pretty well the last of my heat going back and straightening up a piece, and that's a good general practice to get into. The straighter you can keep your pieces, the easier it is going to be to forge. I've always found. The recovery time doesn't seem to be quite as quick with the horn as it is with the coal.
Can you weld in it?
I wasn't able to weld in it yesterday. But then my best forge welds are the ones I don't intend to do anyway. I don't know why you couldn't. I mean, we had it sparking yesterday good. So if you've got the heat there, I don't know why you couldn't play.
Spreading out the boss there.
It is spreading out a little bit. I'm going to bring that back down to about original stock size. We won't take this one down much lower. So just like we've got step one, step two.
Prefer making them out of round stock rather than square stock.
Not necessarily. The Clay asked if I prefer making them out of round stock or square stock. As in most of my projects, whatever's laying around is what I snatch up to use. This was material that I had on hand, and that's why I'm using it. All right, now, this third step, the one that I botched trying to draw it up there, we did step one here, we did step two here, step three is going to be another quarter turn. I'm going to extend it over the anvil just a little bit, and I'm going to use that same half-face blow again and start drawing out my reins. Yes, sir. Yes, or make all the turns the same. I've always made mine counterclockwise. But as long as you make them the same, they're going to wind up the same.
You're left-handed and right-handed, those different.
Clay says if you're left-handed or right-handed, it's going to be different. Dr. Batson says they're going to drop different. I was in a demo one time, and I respect both of these gentlemen tremendously. I was, Jim says it doesn't matter. I was doing a demo one time. That's kind of like the horn facing either direction. Okay, so we went one, we went two, we're coming over here to three. I'm going to allow about 3/4 of an inch. And I'll take another heat on there. But there we've got step one, step two, step three. We're going to use that same thing on both pieces. Now, we were talking about left-handed and right-handed tongs and which way the horn of the anvil was supposed to face. I was at a place demonstrating one time, and man, a guy got on me. He was just absolutely adamant that I had my anvil turned in the wrong direction. Oh my goodness, I was just absolutely doing that wrong because I was a right-handed blacksmith and I was supposed to have the anvil pointed that direction. And I put up with it for a little while, and I knew the guy. And his name was Jim too, by the way. And I finally looked at him and I said, Jim, I said, I consider myself a good enough blacksmith. I can work no matter which way the horn's facing. And he walked off. No. Do you? No? All right.
I could just step around the backside. Hey, but fair Tongs and Jim Batson class in January 1987. I'm still using them today.
There you go. Clay just said he made his first set of tongs in Jim Batson's class in 1987, and he's still using them today. Why I'm up here, I don't have a clue. When you've got those two guys out there.
That was all the fair.
Oh, well, see, I make a lot of mine. Oh my goodness. Yep. Now let's talk about material. You will read and hear people talk that your tongs have to be made out of XYZ material. I always make my tongs out of mild steel. It's cheap. I've always got it on hand. They've never failed. I've got a pair that I made, I believe in '89, that I still use today. I did not bring them with me because I knew I was going to make these others. All right, now, just like that other pair, we've got the boss made, and I'm going to round that up just a little bit for aesthetics. We've got the boss, we've got the jaw made, we've got the boss made, we've got the reins started out. Now, if at this point you want to cut your tongs off and weld the handle on them, forge weld them on, MIG weld them on, arc weld them on, accidentally weld them on, that's fine. You know, or you can go ahead and draw them out. You may see tongs that people have made out of one piece where they split the jaw, where they split the reins out. And that's all right too. One thing that I always tell people when I'm doing a demonstration is that the way I'm showing you is not the only way. It's a way that's worked for me. I am a firm believer in that no matter what your tool is, if it's a hammer, if it's a pair of tongs, if it's a punch or slitter, anything, you're going to do better work if that tool feels good to you. And if it doesn't, I think that's going to a certain extent, affect how well you can do the work. Now, that's just my own preference. Like I said, I like lighter tongs. This is a commercial made pair of tongs that I've become very fond of and used a long time. And you can tell that the tongs that I use all the time, the handles look almost chrome. And that's not because I've polished them out with a wire wheel and sandpaper. That's because in many cases I handle them 8 hours a day when I was working full time. Okay, we're just going to do a little bit more work on these reins here. Kind of blend them in. Now we'll talk a little bit about another basic forging practice that most of us went through and learned a long time ago was how to turn a piece of square stock into a piece of round stock. Now this was round stock when I was starting. We've changed the shape of it a good bit. When you're working, when you're hammering something, the only thing that's being affected is between the hammer and the anvil. So as long as if you keep hammering on a piece straight up and down in the same place, it's just going to get wider and it's going to get longer and thinner. If you want to keep a piece square, and you'll probably notice me doing this, I'm taking a couple of licks from one side, I rotate it, and do that again, and I'm back and forth all the time. And that's creating basically a square cross section. To me, square cross section is not comfortable for my hand. So then what I'll do is I'll turn that on the diamond and I'll start hammering them edges, and we're turning a square into an octagon. Sometimes in some of your reading you might see the term SOR. That stands for square, octagon, and round. If we were to draw that process up on our board, here's our square. If we want to turn that into an octagon, then we're hammering on the corners. You're hammering this way, the anvil's here. You turn 4 sides into 8 sides. If you want it a little rounder, then you start going back to these corners. I often compare it to string art, where you can get very nice, graceful radiuses just working in straight lines. Then you go from square to octagon to round. Proven technique. I didn't invent it. Clay didn't invent it. Even Jim didn't invent it. All right, that's about all I'm going to do to these reins here. I'm going to round this one up just a little bit. Okay. first started talking, I talked about doing both sides the same. One, two, and three. One, two, and three. Okay? Both sides are the same. And measuring it, this isn't the first pair I've ever done, but it's the first pair I've done in a good while. Huh? Dude, you're right. Jim says a blind hog finds an acre every once in a while, and he's right. All right, we're gonna do our punch. Now, there again, and as I talked about earlier, I mean this is everything we've talked about has been fairly basic as far as hammering technique. We're doing the same thing. We're just rotating it. One of the other fairly basic. Are we out of course? So we may have to switch to coal here. One of the other basic blacksmithing skills: punching a hole. Any machinist can put a drill in a drill press, unless it's just completely rounded off and dull with dirt and drill a hole. Okay. So the blacksmith makes a hole. We're gonna do a little bit different. We're gonna start. This is our piece. And I'm gonna start my punch, and I'm gonna punch through and down till I feel my punch bottom out against the anvil. I can feel it. I can hear it. At that point, I'm going to turn my piece over. And what I will see is either a dark or a shiny spot right there where the bottom of that hole is. That's where I'm going to put my punch. I'm going to use this as the female part of my die. I'm going to drive my punch down through it. We're going to have our hole. Dustin, if you don't mind, can you hold that for me?
You want to do it on traps?
No, let's do it. Okay. The other way. Turn it. Okay, that last blow, I don't know if you can hear it. I can hear it. I can feel it. I don't know if Dave's camera will pick it up or not. So we'll put a circle. Right there is the bottom of that hole. Okay. Playing chips to do this in your sleep. Hold that for me. Now I'm doing this with my jaw hanging over the offside edge of the anvil, so that when I turn it around and go from the other side, can lay that down on a flat surface. There's our bottom, turn it over. We're gonna put our punch in our hole. And there's our hole. When I first started smithing, the man that was working with me, he used to want to do things like this at a real high heat. And I just always had a terrible time. And then I had another fella say, if you'll wait just a second and let that cool off, it'll shear easier. And when I did that, I started having a whole lot more success punching my hole. Okay, so I.
Blue heat is 800 degrees.
Okay.
That was real heat.
Not quite. There's our second hole. Go ahead. Keep that warm. Now, one of the other things we're going to do here real quick. If you look at these tongs, you'll see that I put a V in them, both lengthwise and crosswise, to hold a small piece of either square stock or round stock. I have found that it works out better for me if I put the V in one piece and then go ahead and assemble my tongs, and then I grab just a small square piece of stock, and that allows me to put the V in the other piece as I'm adjusting everything, and they're always lined up. That's the way that works out good for me. So what we're going to do, Dustin's going to warm that up now. I'll show you this other piece. I've got a swedge block down here that we're going to use on another pair of tongs. I'm not even going to show you that. Forget you so. All right. Dustin's going to hold that for me. I'm going to take my chisel and I'm going to just put a line in there to where I can make sure that V is good and straight. And then to put that V in there, this is just a piece of mild steel that I've ground 90 degrees that I'm going to drive down in there, and that's what I'll create my V with. There again, I may be the guiltiest person in the world of just picking up a piece of steel and making a tool that I need out of it. But if you've ever been to Clay's shop, you'll know that I'm not the only one that does that. All right, now I've got a nice straight line. I'll come back. There's one side of my Tongs bead, both ways. So then when I assemble them and get them loosened up, I can hold a piece of stock in there. And now that we have my my beads lined up on. Okay, let me find my rib. Every once in a while, you'll hear people have a discussion about rivets. And if you're going to make your tongs, you need to make your rivets to go in your tongs.
Sounds like a riveting conversation.
Do what?
Sounds like a riveting
It does
conversation.
sound like a riveting conversation, doesn't it? I don't make my own rivets. I know. I'll just confess now, and I am unrepentant. I do not make my own rivets. If I want rivets, I buy rivets. In the case of these tongs, Don says yes. And he can tell you that story. In the case of this first set of tongs, I've just cut a piece of round stock. I'm going to
Where do you buy them, Al?
what?
The rivets.
Rivets? Oh, you can buy them from anywhere. You can buy them from Blacksmith Supply Place. You can buy them from MSC. You can
ACs, yes.
Casey?
ACs.
Okay.
and you can buy brass rivets, copper rivets, steel rivets, roundhead rivets, flathead rivets, stainless steel rivets, top rivets. You can buy all kinds of rivets. Knock yourself out. For whatever you want to use it. Like I said, I need to open up that hole just a little bit. I'm just going to use this plain piece of 1/4 inch pin, rivet it over, and then we'll finish these up real quick. And please, if you've got any questions, you see I am not averse to people shouting out words of encouragement. But if you've got any questions, feel free to ask them. Because if the person next to you is not thinking of it, somebody else is. And I learned by asking questions. Clay learned by asking questions. Jim may have got it from divine intervention. I don't know. But, the rest of us have to ask. I need to open up the hole just a little bit. Francis got it from divine intervention. Oh, mercy.
What steel is your punch?
The punch is H13.
Watch your toes.
Okay. All right, now we're gonna hammer and punch. Now, when you make both, we'll make this point too. When you make both pieces the same, it's just like them fancy laser cut tongs. These will fit together too. If you make one way, if you make a right and a left, they'll never go together. They'll just never go together, will they, Jim? Okay, so L. Yes, it's been a long time since I've done, I practiced some. Travis had a nifty little block out here yesterday. I know what y'all are thinking. There is not a chance in the world that he's working when Al gets done with it. Stay with me.
Why did you heat it up?
I didn't need to.
That's why people don't ask questions.
An unfriendly colder environment. Right? You can do it either way, Paul. You can heat them or not. It just, I don't know, I just got to have it or not now. And yes, everybody's right. And Tongs won't open. We're going to warm these up. Hammer, kind of adjust them a little bit. And I'm going to start working them back and forth. Tongs are hot, work them back and forth. And they're going to loosen up. They're going to be fine. And then our last heat will be to put our V in there, and we'll be done with these. And Dustin can switch over to coal since we're out of corn, and we'll move on to this next pair. This second pair will not take long at all to do, but it's a nice. This was a pair, and I'll talk about these while we're warming up here. Lester brought a pair of tongs to one of our meetings one day that he had made and demonstrated for us. And I really kind of liked the looks of them. So I went home and filed the serial numbers off of it and come up with my own idea. But Lester's where it come from.
Pair of this stainless steel.
There you go. Do them stainless steel ones by hand. Yeah, a little hard. Yes. We got time for a commercial break here. If anybody's building a coal forge or corn forge, and you need a nice super sucker hood, Lester Beckman's the man to get it.
Hey Lester, you have an email, so anybody that's watching can email you and find out about a hood.
Do you have an email, Lester? Look on the internet for super sucker hoods. I bear no responsibility after that.
It's better than a big hood.
God, you can see this is not very hot, but lo and behold, I will confess, I did not get that joint as nice as I wanted to. We're going to let Dustin switch over to coal. And I'll explain the rest of this process while he's doing that, and then we'll finish these up for another time. Or no, actually, these will probably either go in the Athens Forge toolbox that we use for people who, when we're having classes, or they'll go in the AFC box. I don't remember if Ronnie talked about this or not. At the fall AFC conference, there's going to be another toolbox that's going to be raffled off. The Athens Forge has agreed to make some tongs for that box. There'll be a pair of tongs. I'll make a pair of tongs like this. I'm going to make a pair of tongs like this. Somewhere around here, we have a list of tongs that we would like to put in that box. So if you're willing to make a pair of tongs for the Athens Forge to put in the AFC box to be raffled off in September, see myself or Ronnie or Travis, and we will appreciate your help. Now, what I would do, or what I will do here in just a second, is, you see I'm still working these, loosen up that joint. We're going to get this warm again, I'm gonna align my jaws just a little bit better. I'm gonna put my 1/4 inch piece down in there, hammer it down, thus creating the other V and a matching V. And then I'm gonna put these in a vise, and I'm going to align my tongs, my reins, so that they're in the same plane. That's the way I like to do my tongs. That way they can be used by either a left or a right-handed person, and it doesn't make any difference. All right, we want this in. Here we do one. Don't burn them up now.
Now, while that's here, let me ask you, I bought a pair of those reins,
Yes,
and all those railroad spikes.
yes.
And I put them together and I used them, and then they just, they just essentially bent. How often do you put them in the water and cool them off?
Okay, the question was, he had a pair of tongs that he bought, a pair of these blanks, the railroad spikes, put them together. He was using them. They started bending and spreading apart. So he asked him, how often to put them in water. The only reason I put my tongs in water is because I don't want to burn my hands. As far as keeping a jaw from deforming, I don't know that that'd be a good idea, and depending on what they're made out of, if it's a spring steel or something, it could harm them. Travis, where's your spike tongs at? Where's Travis? I do not see them.
They're in their own desk.
Travis must have left for lunch. Travis makes a real good pair of railroad spikes that holds the head. Wherever Calvin's at, Calvin makes a real good pair of real good pair of tongs to hold the heads. All right, now I'm going to align my jaws a little bit so that they fit together nice and even. While it's in here, I'm also going to use my heat. And I'm going to adjust my reins. Make sure everything's straight. Okay, we're still functional, but I'm going to tighten it up just a little bit. We're going to take one more heat and get our V in there. Ooh, oh, okay. Here's Calvin's spike head. Travis's got a spike. Here's Travis's spike head. Travis's railroad spike tongs. They hold the head real good.
Nice.
Very secure. You could do anything in the world you want with that spike. I never did too much with railroad spikes because I never had a pair of tongs to hold them good. Calvin makes a pair with a solid jaw that are grooved to hold the spike the same way.
I take a pair of flat jaw tongs and spread it out, cut them off, get them hot, put a head in there, and hammer them to the ground.
so that it's holding the head just like that. So we've talked about 3 ways to hold railroad flaps. All right, now I'm going to flatten these jaws. I've got a piece of 1/4 inch here that I'm going to lay down in that bottom groove. And then I'm going to lay it in my side groove. Now, I have a set of flat-jawed tongs with a groove to hold either small square or small round stop. We started these out of 5/8 round. They'll last for a long time. They're mild steel. Like I said, they're about, so we've got $1 worth of material. We've got $4 worth of corn. And you've got a pair of tongs. As opposed to a $10 set of blanks that you have to work on and then finish, or a $30 to $40 or a $30 to $70 set of tongs that somebody else makes and you pay shipping on. You've learned half face blows. You've learned the steps to make. You've practiced drawing out your reins. You've practiced punching your holes. You've set a rivet, and you put a V in your columns. There's a lot you can learn. Make a little set of columns. Okay, questions about these before we move on? All right, these are still warm. And like I say, this is, when I was working all the time, I normally had 2 sets of these that I was using all day every day because I handled smaller pieces that had flats on them for the most part. And these were my left hand for all intents and purposes. Okay, we need to let these cool. No, because I want to cut them off and make them even. And as you can see, now see, I got these drawn out between the hammer and today. They're drawn out a little longer than I wanted. So you could probably even cut that material size down to 6 inches and you'd still have plenty. All right, now, this second set. We're going to start out with 2 pieces, 3/8 round, 15 inches long. For a lot of things that I'll do, so that I remember how to do them, I make a set of steps. And I've done that same thing for this. Basically, I'm going to come out. Let's do this over here. I'm going to come out and I'm going to set about 1 inch of that material at about a 45-degree angle. That's my first step. Next step, I'm going to put a flat on that. Okay. For my next step, I've got a little jig made. I'm going to clamp that flat in the jig, wrap it around, and do all this in one heat. Next step, I'm going to flatten that out because a rectangle is stronger than just a circle. So I'm going to pick up enough strength for where my rivet goes, my boss. I'm going to add a little bit of strength to it. The next step is I'm going to put that V in them, and we're going to use a different process for putting this V in them. We're going to do both pieces exactly the same. We're going to rivet them together, and you're going to have a set of tongs that wind up looking like this. And again, this is a lighter tong that Travis and I have used in our classes a lot. You can make it pretty quick. Even as out of shape as my arm is, I made 4 sets of these one morning. I paid for it, but I did make 4 sets in one morning. Okay, so there's my first step. Now I can go ahead. The second step on this one, I want to leave that about 3/16 of an inch. So there's step 1 and step 2. Spreading that, like I say, this is 3/8. I'm spreading that out to approximately a 1/2 inch.
Al's got his eyeball calibrated. You can put a mark on your hand.
Yes, Clay's right. You can put, when you're doing things repetitively like this, you can mark your anvils. To me, an anvil is just another tool. Now, there are some people that are really, really picky about their anvils. Travis told me I could work over here, but I decided to work on this one today. But I write on my anvils. I use soapstone. I use Sharpies. It's just another tool with me. Now, I'm going to come over here, and you are welcome to photograph this little jig if you'd like. I'm sure somebody much smarter than me come up with one like it. But basically, I bring this piece over here. The only reason I clamp it in is to hold it in place. I wrap it around. I drop it down. And with my little jig, I'll just wait and show you that in just a second.
Hey Al,
Sir,
after you do that next bend, can you hold up the jig next to the piece in front of the camera?
I can.
Because you can't see that far.
Okay, so I'm going to put here, clamp, bring it around. Now, Mr. Lester Beckman did all his freehand, but Al had to do his, make a jig. Simple jig. Makes everything the same. Pardon? I would. I've only got 2 hands left. I'm gonna put it from out. I know. Okay, so
Thank you. What was your original start size of that material?
original start size was 3/8 diameter by 15 inches long. All right, so we've got our shape. I'm going to flatten them up. And then we'll form the V. When I do a smaller set of tongs like that, normally I will drill them out for the rivets. I've not got a whole lot of mass there to play with, and I can control the load. On small things, I've found that works better for me. But the principle's still the same. You drill them out, you put them together, you rivet them tight, you adjust them and loosen them up. And we won't. Oh, okay. Now, I'm not going to get on that jaw. I am going to come. Down in my boss here. They wind up about 3/16 by half. Now this is for light work. Okay, this is one of the classes that Travis and I teach. We do a coat rack with several hooks on it. Several of you have been through that class. These are the tongs primarily that we have the students using when we're making the hooks. Okay, all we need, Dustin, is the jaw. Another, for me, because I am lazy, reason for making these out of round stock is I've not got any hard edges I've got to deal with. Everything's going to be nice and smooth and comfortable to the hand, and I don't have to worry about anything. All right, now, this last step on these that we'll worry about right now, I'm going to form this V. And unlike the V that we just pushed into the previous set of tongs, this one we're going to form in a sledge block. And normally at this point, I tell all of the budding blacksmiths that you are not to run home and tell your wife that Al says I have to have a sledge block. Yeah. They're real nice. They're real nice, Don. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take that and I'm going to have it down here so you can't see it. But I'm going to have that jaw laying in my V. I'm going to go back to my plain old nasty mild steel V tool, and I'm going to drive that material down into that V shape. Now, sledge blocks are nice. You can do the same thing if you have an anvil with a step on it between the face and the horn. You can lay your material in there and use that for a V. You can tighten up your vice jaws a little bit and use that as the female part of your knee. So there's a lot of different ways to do it, Don.
Take a piece of 1/8 square and drive a piece of square sock into it.
Yes.
Make your own little-
I told Ronnie, why didn't you cut a V in this when you was doing it, and we'd have one. All right, so we're gonna hold this here. And I'm gonna. Yes, sweat gloss are wonderful things. The old song says second verse same as the first. Now, like I said, I'm gonna let these cool, and then I will drill and rivet these together, and we can adjust them. But yes, yep, yeah, you could. There's a lot of different ways to do it. If you want to put this shape, you know, and like I say, rather than make a jig, you can spread your vice jaws. You can take a round piece of stock. Got somebody to hold it. You drive down it, flatten out the sides. You've got your jig. You can make a jig like I made. Probably the only reason I made that jig was because I knew I wanted to make a bunch of these for the classes. And it's an easy, quick way to do. Now, you could make, you know, if you want to make this out of bigger stock, you can make these bigger. This is, you know, kind of a little modified bolt tongs. I thought I had a bolt in my pocket, but I don't. So that your bolt head fits on the inside. That's about all there is to it.
Now,
Sir,
I've made several sets like this where I just leave the jaw flat and then weld the box jaw
yes.
on one side, makes a nice pair of knife tongs up to about 1 inch. I've gone up to 2 inches. They start getting
Gets a
beat
little
up
wonky.
pretty bad.
Yeah, and that's what, you know, Steve brings an interesting point. You know, you've got a pair of tongs, and this set of tongs are supposed to be turned into a V-block bolt style tongs. This pair of tongs, like I said, costs material wise less than $1 and weighs maybe 1/3 of a pound. The blanks, maybe you can get them for $10. Weighs, I'm guessing, 1.5 pounds. You know, when you're using them all day long, I'll take this light pair any day. They're smaller. You can adjust the size. I made this point, and I'm pleased. I'm not saying anything bad against these. I like my tongs to be lighter. I would much prefer a lighter pair of tongs than a heavier pair of tongs. There's times when you need heavier tongs when you're handling bigger stuff. I've got probably 10 or 12 sets of tongs, and they served me for about everything I needed to do in my production. Travis is a lot more diverse in his work. You see, Lester's got some of them hid, but this whole wall over here of Travis's tongs. I'm sure Travis will say you are free to examine his tongs. There will be full body searches before everybody leaves in case any of them come in this. Yeah. Questions?
Al, what weight hammer are you swinging?
That is a 1,000-gram hammer, which is a little over about 2 pounds. That's a hammer size that I'm comfortable with. It's not as heavy a hammer as many people use, but I've shown people this before. Even though it's not ergonomically correct to have your thumb on top of the hammer, if you look at my hammer handle, you'll notice there's a groove right there, which was created by my thumb. I've used this hammer for a long time.
It's ergonomically correct now.
For me, yes, it is.
Swedish.
Yes, a Swedish battered hammer. You will notice I've got my handle shaved down considerably over what they would come. One of my mentors had his hammers shaved down like that, and I asked him for an explanation one day, and here's what he told me. He said, if you ever watch, I'm sure we're all riveted to it when it happens, but if you ever see an Olympic weightlifter, these guys are lifting, several hundred pounds, and the bars that they're using are about that big around. The explanation is they don't waste any energy gripping that bar. They can apply everything to lifting the weight. That was his explanation for shaving his hammer handles down, and I have found that I prefer that myself. Again, a hammer handle is a personal thing. I know when Calvin makes a hammer, his handles are bigger, different. Travis and Dustin, making hammers.
About right length too, really. A little short.
Yes, that's a good point. But this is not the first hammer I ran. I had a little 2-pound hammer. I really liked it. I read someplace, let's see, how was it? You were supposed to hold it in your hand and cut the handle off at the crook of your elbow. And I hated that hammer from the day I did it. And I had used that hammer for years. And when I put a long handle back in that hammer, it was like finding an old friend again. But there again, that's a personal thing. That's the way you hold the hammer. I won't even get into some of the way people say to use hammers. This works for... No, I ain't going there, Clay. I'll let you take center stage and take care of that. This is comfortable for me. And I made the point earlier. I'm a firm believer, if your tools are comfortable for you, you're going to do better work, no matter what kind of work you do.
I prefer the stupid.
Brian likes them short.
You have more force with a longer handle than you can a short.
That's true.
MV square. You get a higher velocity.
So that's all I got for you. Unless there's some other questions, we're gonna we've got time here. Somebody wants to work up here, they can work in this. Sir. Oh, I know what he's gonna say. He's gonna say, why don't you have it cut off here? Clay, explain that to him. Tell him how that works. I've tried. He's just too dumb.
You're not doing it. You're supposed to. You're not using it.
But it don't feel right.
Hey, you're happy.
That's right.
I wanted one that I built myself. I don't have a striker. I was here at the demonstration where
That's pretty.
you had a striker help work and make your hammer. So I actually wound up making a fuller to do that.
To do the.
You're right. Actually, I brought it in here.
Sure.
Show it.
Good.
That's very nice.
Maybe just a Matavo
All right.
welder and a
Look at that.
drill press. But this gives me the ability to get parallel fullers at different, thicknesses. And then I use it, these are pretty frequently, you can see. It's got a little bit of arrow.
And see, and Brian makes a good point.
This is plate, you have a Matavo, and this plate is real thick, but I just happen to have a drop. Is that a piece of steel there? And then these are made from car axle, so they held up real well. So there's a lot of different things for me.
That's nice.
And see, and Brian makes a good, but he makes an important point. Back in the old days, there were, back in the old days, when you worked in a blacksmith shop, there was a lot of people around. So there were strikers. There were people that helped you. If you've watched the video that the Athens Forge have on their website about Samuel Yellen and him doing work, see, he's used to using a striker. Most of us today work by ourselves. Consequently, things like this have come up. And a lot of things. Go down and visit Clay and look at all the stuff he's come up with. He works by himself. We all work by ourselves. It's easier when you've got people around to help. But sometimes you have to make do. And that's a good point. And you'll see this tool Brian made. And matter of fact, we made, if you look over here by Steve, one of the Athens Forge projects here a couple of years ago, we made these little guillotine tools, Smith and Magicians, that you can change your dies in.
Brian, you want to hold up your tool so the camera can get a
So
good look at it?
there's all different ways. Here, hold this up.
And this is actually made from an axle that I've got at Mike's merchandise where you get all kinds of scrap.
That's nice.
But this is adjustable, something smaller.
I like it.
And that's actually been my favorite hammer. I use this all the time. It's just water hardened. Don't know what kind of steel, but it was made out of a piece of machine shaft, about 2 inches in diameter. And it's got good spark.
Good job.
There you go. Anything else?
You know what I appreciate about the way you teach out? It's idiot proof. And I thank you for that.
Well, when you've got an idiot teaching a class, that's what you get, Carol.
I can actually follow what you're teaching. Thank you.
Okay, like I said, if we've not got anything else, we've got a fire here. Use this anvil. We're gonna. I believe if somebody wants to start on some of these or see something else simple, we'll have a gas forge set up over here. If we've got people that want to do something else, we've got another forge we can set up. Or if it's warmed up enough outside, we'll haul one of the Athens Forge coal forges outside and fire that up. Thank you all for being here today.
Yeah.
Thank
Give
you,
him a
Jeff.
hand, guys.
Thank Dave. Thank all you people online for watching. You can see our other videos at AFC Athens Forge on YouTube. You can go to our website, athensforge.com. And for those of you who are Facebook literate, you can see the Athens Forge site on Facebook.
And thank you to the technical crew.
Yes.
Got his books over there.
Jim's got books to sell and sign out here. I think Ronnie had some forges. Dustin had some grinders. I've got some copper out there. If any of you need to make a copper rose for your significant other. And there's some, Charlie brought some chili in there, so nobody needs to go away. We got donuts and cookies, so please hang around.
See Ron run this hydraulic forging press too.
Oh, if anybody wants to make tongs, Ashton's got material over there. Both for the flat jaw tongs or for this other set. If you're going to make the other set, I guess you need to be up here where we can clamp it in this good solid vise.
What's the cost of
$1